In this video, I'm going to show you how to close your saltwater DE filtered pool for winter. But first, I want to review the basic operation of the pool. Every pool, whether large or small, above ground or below ground, share the same basic elements. A skimmer, which is the intake, a pump, a filter, and the inlet, which is also considered the return. The skimmer is where the water intake is located. As the water is taken out of the pool, it passes through the skimmer basket located inside the skimmer. The water continues from the skimmer to the pump, which also has a basket to trap items that made it past the skimmer. As the water goes through the pump, it goes into the filter. The filter cleans out the fine particles out of the water. And then it goes from the filter into, it could be a heater if you have one. And then it goes to the chlorinator. The chlorinator chlorinates the water from the salt in the water. And then from there, it goes back into the pool through the inlet. And there you have it. That's the parts of your pool. So your pool might have one skimmer and one inlet, or it might have two skimmers and two inlets. It might not have a heater, or it may. It might not have a chlorinator, but in this case, ours does. So let's get started. So the first thing I do when I close my pool is I drain all the water down below the skimmer and the inlet. This allows for two benefits. One is when the water freezes, it won't break anything. The second is that when I go to close the pool and blow the water out of the lines, I know that there's no water going to go back in it. So you can do this a couple different ways to drain the water out of your pool to the right level. You can use a pump like I used last couple of years, which takes time. In this case, it took me 4 hours. Basically half an inch an hour. But this time I decided to do something different. I decided to use the pump in the pool. So I used the suction hose that came with the pool, put it at an angle, and allowed the pump to drain the water to the acceptable level. In order to do this, I had to open up the valve to clean out the discharge valve on the filter. So I had a 1.5 inch elbow that I screwed onto the discharge valve. And then I used one of those flexible plastic hoses with a hose clamp. And I just discharged the water out and into the yard until the water was at the appropriate level, which I said below the inlet and below the skimmer. So the next thing I do, I open up the drain plugs on the pump itself. There are two drain plugs on mine. One's underneath the propeller, or the impeller, I guess, and one's actually in the skimmer basket of the pump that the grounding wire goes through. I loosen both those up and drain those out. And I keep them loosened because I'm going to suck all the water out of them. And so I do a blowing and a sucking action from the vacuum cleaner. This confirms that I got all the water out as much as I can. After you've blown those drain plugs out of the pump, you want to screw them back in loosely. I don't screw them all the way in. I want to have a little bit of give, so in case there's any residual water in there, that has room to expand. Once you're done pumping all the water out of the pool that you need to reach those acceptable levels, go ahead and turn the breakers off for the pool. That means the light, the pump, the heater, whatever breakers you have associated with the pool, turn them all off. Next thing we do is remove the chlorinator. This requires you spin the two nuts, one by hand, one on each side. Slowly remove the chlorinator and then pull the cord from the circuit board. Now with the chlorinator out of the way, we're getting ready to blow the inlet pipe. This is the return pipe that the water goes back into the pool with. From the inlet, we're going to screw on an elbow with a small extension. We do this for two reasons. One, it's a very neat looking show once you blow the water out like a fountain, but really it makes it easier to put the antifreeze into the inlet pipeline. Go over to where the chlorinator was and go ahead and hook up your 6.5 horsepower wet dry shop vac. Put it in blow mode. The 6.5 horsepower is the minimum you'll need. 5.5 horsepower shop vac will not be adequate enough to push that much water. You want to make sure these lines are clean of water as much as you can. So now you hook up the shop vac to it and you push it against that pipe and let the water just spray out the other end. Do this for a couple minutes until you don't see any more water spraying out the other end. Then switch over to vacuum mode and start sucking the water out from that pipe as well. Like I said, every pipe we're going to do, you're going to blow the air through it and you're going to suck the air through it to make sure there's as much water as you can get out of those pipes. Once you're done blowing the lines out of the inlet, you want to go ahead and pour 1 gallon of the non-toxic antifreeze into it from the stand-up pipe that you just screwed into it after you're done blowing the lines out. Once you're done filling the inlet with antifreeze, you can now put the sealer plug and screw the sealer plug into the inlet valve. You want to do this until it's just tight. So maybe a quarter turn past after snug. Might need a screwdriver to put it in the slot to help turn the plug. Or maybe a pair of channel locks. The other line now to clean out is the skimmer basket line, or the intake. First, you're going to take the skimmer basket out of the skimmer. You're going to go ahead and put the vacuum shop vac into suction mode, suck the water out of the skimmer and through the pipe in the skimmer. Put it down to the bottom and suck that water out of there. You also want to, when you're done with that, you can feel the water going through that accordion pipe of your shop vac. When you stop feeling that anymore, turn into blow mode. Put your shop vac into blow mode and have somebody watch over the skimmer, or the basket near the pump. You're going to see water come out of there. You also want to clean out that pump skimmer basket area. You want to make sure it's clean and dry. You also want to blow up air through the filter. When all the water is done blowing out of there, you're ready to put the antifreeze in. So get a gizmo. You're going to need one of those. A gizmo is a green, long tube looking thing, I guess you could say. It serves a couple purposes. Some people who don't drain their pool below the skimmer, this will allow the water that goes, if it's in the skimmer at the time when the water freezes, to collapse the gizmo instead of ruining your skimmer basket. So you might say, well, why don't I do that? I don't want to risk it. The pool costs too much. So I'd rather just drain the water down a little bit, blow the skimmer, and keep myself safe. I still put the gizmo in for a couple of different reasons. One, it allows like an extra extension so I can pour the antifreeze down in there. And two, if it does the water level ever gets that high, it will give me a little safety net. Once you have the gizmo screwed in place, take the little black cap off the end of it. Pour a gallon of the non-toxic antifreeze in it. I use the pink solution. And also, take this opportunity to take the stairs out. If you have external metal stairs like I have, I take them out and I suck all the water out of both those holes. This takes a little bit of time, but it works because you have to get the right amount of airflow in there to get the water out. Once those lines are clean, or those holes are clean, I have rubber stoppers I shove in there just so to keep the water out from going, the rainwater out, or snow, so it doesn't get in there and freeze and crack them. Now it's time to add the chlorine shock to your pool. You have to add chlorine to the pool over the winter time just to ensure that it doesn't grow anything in it. So, in my case, I have a 33,000 gallon pool. Mine's a 20 by 40 foot pool. I use 3 bags. I mix them separately in a 5 gallon container. You make sure that chlorine is dissolved. I use the granular stuff, not the mixture, not the liquid stuff. So I mix it in with water, 5 gallons of water, mix it thoroughly, and I go around the perimeter of the pool dumping it all the way around. I do this twice with the 2 bags. The third bag that I mix, I concentrate mainly in the deep end because that's where the most of the water is. I'll dump it right in the middle of the pool. I'll actually just throw it from the side into the pool. At this point, you do not want to go into the pool because you have too much chlorine in there. So just be careful. It's strong stuff. Now it's time to put your window cover on. In my case, my winter cover is about 70 pounds. So I decided to do something different this time. Instead of going lengthwise down the pole with 4 people, I only had 3 people this time, so I decided to go with widthways instead. This maximized my time. It was a lot shorter, and it was a lot cleaner, and it was a lot easier. Cleaner meaning that you don't have the opportunity. It doesn't have the long enough opportunity to drag down into the water. See, the whole thing is you have to keep the edges really taut. So everybody has to pull on their end to keep it as level as possible as you're draping this thing over the pole. Because once you get water on that cover, it really weighs a lot, and you won't be able to insert the springs into the ground to secure them. You have to get that water out of there somehow. The other thing before you drape the cover over the pole is you'll need to unscrew the standoffs. The standoffs are they're brass fittings inside the cement that I installed. This is what's going to secure the springs to your winter cover too. You got to unscrew them. They might be kind of tough because they've have dirt in them from over the summer, but unscrew them until you're about a ½ inch above the ground. That way you have room to hook the spring over it. To bring that cover across, I'll flip over the springs, all the springs over so they don't snag the pull liner. Then you drape it over as each person pulls each side, really taut. Once it gets to each person's side, you secure the middle sections first, like a plus sign. You do the middle sections widthways and you do the middle sections longways. Once you do that, you work your way whichever ones you want to do at that point until you get them all secured. So next up is what I do with my solar cover. I have a solar cover that's manual, not automatic or built in. So I took the handle off the solar cover reel and secure that in the house for winter. I'll take sandwich bags and zip tie them to the ends so that the snow and the rain doesn't get to them. And then I'll lay the solar cover reel on the ground so that there's no stress put on the reel itself. Then I'll go ahead and cover it with a couple tarps and some 2x4s. That's pretty much all I need for that. This next part is optional. I haven't done it in the first couple of years, but I decided to do it last year and this year. It's removing the actual pump itself. It just, I felt, was a better way of keeping the pump more longevity in use. So in this case, I take the wires. Obviously the power is off because you took care of the breakers earlier. But you disconnect the wires, and I bag those up with a zip tie as well. Then I go ahead and remove the 4 bolts and also the bonding screw, the bonding ground screw, in order to take that pump out. When I take the pump out, you're going to notice there's 2 parts to that pump: the impeller cover and the pump itself. Both are labeled with the top on there. You want to make sure they match when you put them back together, because they do come apart. There are 2 rubber rings, seal rings. One's used for the pump and one's used for the pump skimmer basket. You want to remove both of those. Okay, next we concentrate on the filter itself. There are roughly around 15 different bolts that run around my filter to release that cover on top. Remove each of them, and also I removed that black handle bolt as well. Now the top of my pump goes down to my heater, so I have to unscrew the pipe to the heater in order to get the lid off the filter. Carefully lift the filter lid off. You might have to push down on the actuator, that metal actuator that holds on the actual filter fingers, in order to get the lid off. But slide the lid off and put that somewhere. Then take your hand and lift up the metal rod which holds all the filtration fingers. You want to lift it out of the filter and put it on the ground somewhere clean, because you're going to wash it off with the hose. Make sure it's totally removed of all the DE material, and then you can store that away. Usually I store it away in a 5-gallon bucket. I'll just put it right on top of a 5-gallon bucket, let it sit there all year. The rest is pretty easy from here. You want to open up that discharge valve on your filter housing, and then go ahead and start spraying all the insides, make sure it's clean. And then eventually you're going to blow air through it and vacuum it. Like I said, you're going to vacuum and blow air through every little piece that the water goes through. You want to do that with the pump. You want to do that with the filter housing as well. Also, in my case, the heater. After you're done removing all the water from the filter, you can go ahead and put the filter top back on the filter casing. So the return pipe from the skimmer, as it goes into the pump, I also put a plug in. This plug actually has a tension screw to it. So you put the plug in and you start screwing down that butterfly, and it will put tension on the sides to hold it in place. Once you're done, you also want to seal up, just like you did the inlet valve, that screw-on seal cap. You also want to do the same kind of cap on the discharge valve of the filter. After I've blown all the water out of the heater, I'll go ahead and put sandwich bags over that connection, as well as the connection that leads where the chlorinator was. You could use plugs if you want to. In just my case, I used the sandwich bags because they worked fine. I zip tie them. Last thing to do is put your little giant pump on top of your cover. This allows any rainwater that gets on top of your cover to get pumped off. If a lot of rainwater would get onto the cover without that, it could possibly sag the cover down and rip it. Although these things are pretty strong. Now in my case, you're going to see that my winter cover has a mesh in the middle. Yeah, that was my fault when I originally bought the pole. It was kind of green because I bought the cover separately and installed it myself. But I thought it would be nice to have the mesh in the middle so that the water wouldn't sit on top of the tarp. The only problem I didn't realize was that the water goes down into the pole and you have to monitor the water level all through the winter, which is a pain in the butt. So every winter I have to go ahead and waterproof the middle section so that water doesn't go down in there until such time I need to replace that winter cover, and then I will buy one with a solid middle. But that's just what I have to deal with. So the little giant has a little hose attachment that you can put your garden hose to, and to extend out to somewhere so it can discharge the water out of the way. In my case, I have a hill behind the house, behind the pool, so it just goes right over there. One of the things they mentioned is for the little giant, or for this pump, this winter water cover pump. One of the things they mentioned, one of the things they recommend is not having that pump out there while the water freezes. That it might break the pump. I haven't had any issues with mine. I've had mine for 4 years, and it's been great, and it's been below zero. When I do know it's getting really cold, like below zero, I might pull it just to keep it safe that way. Any of the parts that you remove from the pool, keep inside a warm, above freezing area. One last thing you have to go do is go ahead and put the coverings over top of the equipment, the pool equipment, the pool filter, the pool pump, the circuit boards that do the chlorinator, that type of thing. And that's how you close your pool. So if you like this video, go ahead and hit the like button. If you want to subscribe, hit the subscribe button. Appreciate you watching this video. Thanks. Have a wonderful day.